Howdy, it's Jim Morado, and this is kind of the second part of my Clear Lake, Iowa videos I'm putting up right now. We're just a tad bit north of Clear Lake, Iowa. I don't think this is technically Clear Lake, but this is we're going out. There's the legendary, huge, oversized Buddy Holly glasses. We are walking out in a cornfield to the spot where Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper had their plane crash that ended their lives back in 1959. And I kept my camera going the whole time we walked through this cornfield. There's a little trail. You'll see other people passing us. Again, early September 2020.
Howdy.
I think people were trying to stay far to the right as we passed them and that kind of thing. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick idea of how long it is to get out. You know, if you get out of your car and you walk to the crash site, it took us, I think, about 8 minutes walking at a pretty decent pace to get to the actual crash site if you decide to go out there. Again, I kept the camera rolling. This is going to be a little shaky. I hope you don't mind. I figured, though, while we're walking out there, that I would tell you a little bit more about the book I read, The Day the Music Died, the last tour of Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens, by Larry Leamer. I picked this book up. Again, this was kind of a last-minute add-on to our road trip out to South Dakota, which was kind of a hastily planned last-minute trip in its own right. So I didn't have a chance to kind of Google around and find a good book, you know, about that plane crash and about those 3 rock stars that died. But I found this book after we got home, and I read it. It's about 250 pages of reading. There's some pictures. And it gives a little bio on each of the performers, a short one, towards the front. And then it kind of gets into the Winter Dance tour and goes into that particular show at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. And then it gets into the plane crash, the aftermath, you know, legal issues that happen afterwards. And then it kind of gets into the legacy of the performers. And it talks about some of the other people involved in the stories and where they're at now, what's going on with them.
Some people can't be bothered.
You know, like I know some of the crickets. It mentions some of the crickets. And I believe they're almost all gone, if not all gone at this point. I thought it was interesting to learn, though, that the Crickets were basically touring really up until just a few years ago, as the last main original member finally, did pass away. Anyway, yeah, this was a great book about it. I learned a lot more that I did not know in the first place. Like, I did not know that even though that plane crashed and the main stars died, they still had a show the very next night in the next city. The show almost got canceled, but they decided to go ahead and try to keep it going, and they pulled in some other performers, and even the Crickets, or really, you kind of had 2 versions of the Crickets at this point: the original Crickets that left Buddy Holly, or that split with Buddy Holly, and then you had Alsop and Jennings, who were sort of, and a drummer, I forget the drummer's name right now, but they were sort of trying, carrying on, and were sometimes kind of sort of referred to as Buddy Holly and the Crickets. So you had a couple of different versions of the Crickets at that moment. I always think that's interesting, when you have bands that sort of split into quasi-second editions of the band. Oh, I was going to say, too, as we're walking out there, this little couple was so nice. They sort of pulled over, let us pass them, and we went up, and we actually had a couple of minutes of private time at the memorial, and they kind of waited for us. I thought that was really sweet of them. That was a really sweet couple. I just wanted to mention that. Just kind of some nice etiquette at something like this. But yeah, going back to the book, The Day the Music Died, I really enjoyed this a lot. Lots of little odd bits of trivia, and if you're a music fan, you probably enjoy that sort of thing. For example, Donna, who Richie Valens' song Donna was written about this girl Donna, and her dad made her basically record an answer song after Richie Valens died, trying to cash in on stuff. You get little bits and pieces of trivia like that, and there's a whole lot of people that kind of come in and out of Valens, Holly, and Richardson's lives. Some good, some bad. The very sad thing is most of these guys, the Big Bopper and Valens in particular, they really didn't see, the financial end. They were famous, they were celebrities, but they really didn't have money in their pockets at that moment. The money had not started rolling in yet. And of course, it kind of filters down and that sort of thing, but they really never had a chance to enjoy the financial benefit of their success. Buddy Holly really didn't either in a lot of ways. He had some people associated with him that kind of took advantage of him, it sounds like. Anyway, I mean, it's very tragic. They all died very young. Two of them left, pregnant wives. Yeah, it's just very, very tragic. Obviously, I don't have to tell you that, but anyway, at the Surf Ballroom, my wife and I bought several postcards to send out, and I actually had some extra. I had some extra stamps, so some of the old Buddy Holly and Richie Valens stamps that came out many years ago. Anyway, I sent. We sat in the parking lot, or not in the parking lot. We had a little parking spot near the Surf Ballroom, and we wrote out postcards to some of our friends, and I stamped them with those stamps. I had to use a little bit of extra postage now because postage has gone up since then. But I sent postcards to some of my friends from Clear Lake, Iowa. Surf Ballroom postcards, and I used Buddy Holly and Richie Valens stamps. And we went to the post office there in Clear Lake. Very nice lady, hand canceled those stamps for me, and sent those out to our friends. And I was really proud of that. I love doing that kind of thing when I'm traveling. Oh, also in the book, The Day the Music Died, and you can Google this if you want. There are photos from the crash site. Yeah, and I started to look at them, but I'm not going to do that. There are photos from the crash site that were in, national papers, and you can actually see the bodies of the three performers. From a distance anyway. There might be more, but the ones in the book, you can kind of see something's there, and it kind of mentions who each one of them are. So yeah, kind of a downer in that way, but also, man, yeah, not to be a downer, but this whole thing is so sad. And when you think about, they thought the plane crashed shortly after midnight. The bodies weren't found until the next morning. It's a very sad thought thinking about, those guys laying in that field after they died and all. Yeah, just a real downer. There was the memorial I just showed you a moment ago. Then I kind of panned around a little bit. Literally, this little memorial where the plane crashed is out in the middle of a cornfield, and here's this little steel guitar somebody made, and people leave little tributes. For what it was, I left a couple of my favorite CDs. I hoped and figured I just left some CDs that I like a lot, hoping that somebody else might come along and take them, to be honest. I know people leave tributes and you should leave those alone, but I left some CDs just hoping somebody might take them. It just seemed like a good thing for me to do. Also, just for what it's worth, right here, we were coming back, and I heard something going through the cornfield. I'm sure it was a cat or a rabbit, but it followed us. Something followed us for probably 30 seconds, and it was just, again, a little bit of a spooky experience on this trip. We're back out by the little road marker of the Buddy Holly glasses. Those are there, so people know that they've gotten to the right spot. And they give you a little map of the Surf Ballroom if you ask. It's just a little photocopied piece of paper showing you how to get out here. And also, just so you know, This is you're driving on some gravel road. You're driving slow on some very, very, very gravelly road, and that kind of added. I mentioned in our other video, as we traveled, as I was planning out our time and everything, I planned about 2 hours in Clear Lake, Iowa, and that was a really bad estimate. I ended up spending way more time just at the surf ballroom than I expected. And then coming out here, we spent more time here than we expected to, partially because of these gravel roads. Very, very, very gravelly. We were driving nice and slow. And I did want to leave a little bit of video of us on the gravel road, just so you get a feel of this. At the surf ballroom, they told us a lot of motorcycle guys come out there, and they don't want to go to the actual site because it's so gravelly. Obviously, we just passed some motorcyclists, bikers. I don't know what the appropriate word is now, but obviously, biker types like to come out to this spot, and it was definitely, I don't want to say a bucket list type of thing, but I felt like this was a pilgrimage in a lot of ways. This is somewhat of a just a special place to go if you've appreciated rock and roll at all, and especially when you think about Buddy Holly and how influential he was on the Beatles and the Grateful Dead, and some of the bands that I've really loved, and how brief his and the other guys' careers really were. Just pretty heavy to think about, and like I said, especially a tragic situation like this. Those guys, and again, the day the music died, that book talks a lot about this. They're on this tour in Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota. In January and February, they're on buses. And the buses break down, the heater breaks down, they're cold, they're miserable. I believe they probably, the Big Bopper and Richie Valens, I think, both had really bad colds. They were probably pretty sickly when they boarded that plane, and it's just such a sad situation. It's a lot to think about. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a quick idea of that. I wanted to let you see what's out there if you go out to see the crash site. So I hope this makes you want to visit Clear Lake, Iowa. Thanks.